بست والخوف بعينيها تتأمل فنجان المقلوب. قالت يا ولدي لا تحزن، قالت يا ولدي لا تحزن، فالحب عليك هو المكتوب يا ولدي، الحب عليك هو المكتوب يا ولدي، الحب عليك هو المكتوب يا ولدي، الحب عليك هو المكتوب يا ولدي. يا ولدي قد مات شهيدا، يا ولدي قد مات شهيدا.
Well, hello and welcome back again to another PalArt podcast. This time we are all the way in Palestine, speaking to one of the most amazing and most talented artists currently in the West Bank. Her name is Riham Isaac, with whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for a long time and working with a little bit, but we still have to work more together. That's on the agenda. That's on one of my on the top of my list. My name is Ahmed Masoud. I'm a Palestinian writer and director. I grew up in the Gaza Strip, so I only got to know Riham really during her work in London, because I can't go to the West Bank, she can't go to Gaza, and this is the reality of being Palestinian. So welcome to the podcast, Riham.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you for hosting me for this podcast at PalArt Collective. And I'm so happy about this collective and being part of it. And and I hope it grows and reaches more audiences as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So really, this is a quick chat where we just want to talk a little bit about your work and what you do, and tell our audience who you are and how you got to where you are right now in terms of being a theatre maker, an artist, a performer, a writer, multidisciplinary performer, everything basically. But maybe we'll just do it through some questions. So I'll just ask you a very, very quick question, Riham. Just wondering about a song that you really like and has made a difference in your life. Which song would that be? What would kind of come to your mind?
Well, that's tricky because there's a lot of songs that I'm inspired by, but usually in my practice or in my work, I'm so much into the old Arabic Egyptian songs, like in the era of the 1920s or 1960s, something like this. Like Abdul Halim and Shadia and Saad Hosni, and all of this genre is my genre. So I'm living in the past. But I would say maybe a song that comes now to my mind is for Abdul Halim. And I think it would be قارئة الفنجان. Do you know it?
Yes, of course. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just obsessed about Abdul Halim, and I think he was one of these artists in Egypt who were who really made it to the top, but he was also like one of these rebellious, I think, at his time. You know, he did introduce these kind of rebellious melodies and short songs and all of this, so I really like it. And I think his poems, like the poems and the songs that he does, is very avant-gardist at his time. So I'm really I really appreciate his work, and also very romantic and very cheesy sometimes, which is all about what I like to do, you know, bring all of these cheesy songs and introduce them in a in a new way, you know, to the
Yeah, yeah.
audiences.
And
Yeah.
also the lyrics that he had as well. I mean, the lyrics were incredible and were written by some of the most famous poets in the
Yes.
Arab world, like Baliq Hamdi and Nizar Qabbani and others. I think Qari'at al-Finjan thing was written by Nizar Qabbani. I
It
think.
was written by Nizar Qabbani.
That's right, who's a very famous Syrian poet.
Exactly. And it's for the audiences who doesn't know like how long it was like 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And it's really like, it just lets you into this journey of somebody reading a cup for this lover and telling him his future. And it's really mesmerizing in so many ways, the music, the melody, and even the poem itself.
This in English would be the fortune teller, wouldn't it? So somebody reading the fortune of a lover, right? And basically, it's not good. It's not looking good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what
news.
she tells him by the end, that he might get lost in the eyes of his lover, and he's going to be lost in the seas or something like this. So there's something skeptical and
Yeah, so the moral of the story, if you fall in love, don't go to a fortune teller. You know, you might not like what you hear. But it's interesting you say that you are into Egyptian music because I feel that, and then sort of old classical Egyptian music, because I feel like people from Gaza or Palestinians from Gaza have more influence of that because we're closer to Gaza somehow. I thought Palestinians in the West Bank and other parts of Palestine are less so, are less influenced by kind of the Egyptian culture or the pop culture in the Arab world. But one of your shows, you've actually chosen the title is a famous song, خلتني أحبك.
Yes.
Lover's Discourse. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Yes. Well, as I told you, like in my work, so I really use a mix of inspirations, and one of my inspirations is actually the classical Egyptian films and the classical Egyptian music. So خلتني أحبك is a song by, I think, Layla Murad, and it's just the title that I think is very attractive. So in English, it's literally like, why did you make me fall in love with you? And since my topic is about love, so I chose that in Arabic. And it just gives you this this question of like, what is she going to talk about? Like, why? There's some sadness in this question, like, why did you make me fall in love with you? So there is this thing, but there is also this thing about, that rings a bell for the Arabic audience, that there is a reference. There's a reference point. I think whenever I tell anyone like ليه خلتني أحبك, then you see the black and white movies.
Yeah.
You see that kind of time, and I'm so inspired. In my work, there is a lot in the work, like in the performance ليه خلتني أحبك, you will see a lot of these small clips that I grew up personally watching on TV. And I think this is where we start learning about love somehow. The roles that you take as a male and a female, there is this eagerness to fall in love with the perfect man, and there's this eager to fall in love with the perfect woman, and then there is this desire, and then there is the pain. Most of the romantic songs, there is this pain. So in my question, the core question sometimes is like, why actually there is this pain in love? And then from there, I go into this journey of my own kind of painful side of my story, and somehow you feel the conflict that you go into when you realize that love is not just the perfect world, or it's not just like roses, that there's other aspects of it, and then there is the bigger aspect of it is like, what do we want from love, and how we will love if we are aware that these are not the roles that we need to play, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's challenging some sort of our concept of love, how we see love, how we understand it, but also kind of the gender roles within love, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, which is very much embedded in our culture, I think, in every culture as well. Like even when I show the work to English audiences or to foreigners, like it's also embedded in the media, it's embedded also in the films, like in everything, like these kind of gender roles and how we learn, and even in our gossips and our talks. Like so I try to show this as well, this aspect where I'm interviewing people as well. So there is this aspect of the Egyptian films, but there's also the aspect of me interviewing people. So I documented my journey. So I would sit with you and I would tell you, so tell me about love. What do you know about love? So define love for me. And then we dive into conversations, which is amazing how I talk to Arabic people and also foreigners. And it's like there is a language that we all speak somehow. So it's very universal, this work, somehow.
So in terms of audience, it's interesting because you did the show here in London before, but you've also performed it in Palestine, right?
Yeah.
What was the reaction of the audience of the two different audiences? Because I can imagine for the Arabic audience, the Palestinian audience, they might have some references. They understand those clips from the kind of black and white movies and how we grew up, etc. But what about the kind of Western audience when you've done it here before? How did they react?
I think it relates to them because it's a very visual performance. So the visual of the films, you can see it on a big screen and you can see it also on this small screen. And then you see me interacting with this kind of video installation. But the visual aspect of it is very, I would say there is this satire and then there is this darkness sometimes. So you see a lot of references that even the English audience or the foreigners can relate to. For example, like a woman, you know, looking sexy and walking sexy and trying to behave. I think that's very universal, even if they don't speak the language. But you can relate to it as well. And I had some people telling me like, oh my God, we can, like, it's the same. Your films are like the same as Hollywood and at that time as well. Like it was influenced by each other, I think, at that time. But also I think the what speaks to the audience internationally, I think, or universally, is the interviews, because I did these interviews with really random people, and it relates a lot. It relates a lot to everyone. Yeah.
So when you say random, is there like something strange in these interviews? Just I'm really intrigued. You know, I want to know. Does anybody say anything outrageous in there, or you want to keep that as a secret so people can come and see the show?
Well, I think it's not outrageous, but it's just more honest, and it's more our thoughts that we think, but we never share it, you know, like I just put it out there. And you see yourself in these interviews, like, yes, I think like this. And sometimes I think like this. And from where did I get this thought? But I think one of my major interviews that people really love is an interview that I did with my mother. And I think everybody related to this interview because, you know, it's like I was 35 at that time, or 36. And I tell her, so what piece of advice will you give me if I was 10 years old, like growing up? And what piece of advice will you give me about love? And people will tell me, like audiences will tell me, like, I don't think I ever had a conversation with my mother about love. So I think that's the kind of relationship or like that speaks to all the audiences, that this kind of intimacy and this kind of you know, little talks that we have with friends and
very intimate, isn't it? So tell us when the show is going to be in London then.
It's going to be performing, like premiering at Vault Festival between 15th until the 20th of March every night. And then I'll be in Belfast premiering in Ireland the 26th and the 27th. You can see all of that also on my website if you like, or in my Instagram, all the dates. You can.
But it's interesting that it's the 15th to the 20th of March in London is part of the Vault Festival, right?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So
I'm really excited to be part of that.
Yeah, it's a really good festival. I know it very well. Did some work with them before. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Yeah, so good luck with it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good luck with it. So I want to move on a little bit and just talk more about you as an artist and sort of some of the influences in your life. Can you think of a place that has had a special effect on you, something that has made you who you are?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind actually is the old house that I used to live in Beit Sahur. So I am based now in Ramallah, but I come from Beit Sahur, which is a town next to Bethlehem. And Beit Sahur is like very well known for its kind of like old city, and like it has this old houses that is like comes back to like 150 or 170 years old. So where I grew up in my great grandfather's house, who he built it by himself.
Wow.
And then my grandmother inherited it, my grandmother, and then my father somehow. And now I turned that space. It was abandoned for more than 10 years. And I've once I finished my studies 2013 from London, it just came back to me, that place. And I went back to it, and I renovated it, and I opened an art space in that house. So just imagine the generations who lived in that house first. But also growing up in that time, I was like between 1987 and 2001. And politically, you know what is 1987? It's the first Intifada. And that house is very old, very, very old. That you know, during the first Intifada, we used to, you know, everybody was there there was like grass movements, and everybody was there in the revolution helping each other. And Beit Sahur in particular had a great story of people helping each other. And there's a lot to say about that time. Actually, a lot. I cannot finish in this podcast. But what I remember in this house is that it used to feel that nobody lived in it. So a lot of the like 17, 16, 18 years old who used to be running away from the soldiers would come and hide into our house, misleading the Israeli soldiers who used to come and try to fetch them. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's actually kind of risky, isn't it? You know, because if the house was found out, or the family was found out that they were hiding resistance kind of fighters, nothing's resistant fighters, people throwing stones basically on soldiers, you know, just normal civilians expressing their opinion, it would have been risky. They could have actually destroyed the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could have, but I think we didn't care at that time. Like everybody was part of that mass movement, and everybody was helping, and everybody opened their houses for these kind of freedom fighters, I would say. But there is a very good film about Beit Sahur that talks about that era, about that time of resistance, called I would recommend people to watch it, called The 18 Cows, The Wanted 18.
The Wanted 18, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
I saw that. That's a really, really good film. Yeah.
So it's a really popular Beit Sahur, my hometown. So that's why I really feel like I'm happy that I was part of it somehow. I was 6 years old at that time, like 6 until like 10, living that era. So I had little memory of it, but I could feel like the connection and that kind of gathering and unity, I would say, in resistance. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm going to end with the final question, which is around, a person that has had so much influence on you, somebody that you know so well. It could be a lover. We talked about love a lot. It could be, I don't know, an enemy or a nemesis or whatever. But yeah, anybody that you think.
Can I say an artist? Can I say an artist that I don't know but has influenced me a lot? No?
Well, yeah, you can. Of course you can. Of course.
Please. I don't want to talk about any lovers.
Okay. Of course you can.
Well, coming back to my, to my inspirations of the Egyptian cinema, because I grew up in this small town, and I was like so much in front of the TV, and this is where I built my kind of artistic passion, maybe, is through an Egyptian actress called Riham. I loved her. She influenced me. I just loved her.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody loved her at that time. She's a dancer. She's a cabaret show. She sings. She's just like, she's very tiny. She's small, but she fills the stage once she's there. And I like that she's also multidisciplinary in a way, that she does all of these things together and she mixes them. So I used to be watching her on TV, and the next day I'm just acting like her.
Yeah.
So that would be someone that has really influenced my work.
Yeah, it's an interesting genre that what Riham was doing, because I don't think there's an equivalent here in the UK or in the West. It's Fawazir Ramadan, which was incredible, which basically a Ramadan entertainment kind of show, wasn't it? And she, as you said, she would dance, she would act, she would do stand-up comedy, she would do all of these things together. But yeah, it's incredible.
And the costumes as well.
Costumes, yeah,
the costumes at that time. And I think one of my like probably a soon project to do is like to do something in the style of Riham Fawazir, like one song that I will be just working in her style of acting and dancing and this kind of show business that we don't portray as well as a Palestinian artist doing that, we have to be crying all the time, but we can also dance and bring that vibe.
Beautiful costumes and feathers and everything. Why not?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Riham, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really hope it goes well with the show in March, and both in London and Belfast. I will definitely be there, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be really interested to come and see it. And I'm hoping that both you and I will get to work together at some point. This is top on my priority list. At some point, we have to make it happen. Maybe Fawazir Ramadan or something. We will make it happen. One in Gaza and one in Beit Sahur. I don't know.
Let's try a new version of a Fawazir Ramadan. Yes, a Palestinian one, our own genre.
That would be great. Brilliant.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Riham, and we will see you later. Come back to the show, please, at any time.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much, Ahmed.
Thank you.
عيني فوزر
عتهزر
حفرفر وكده كده 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 الفرفر
اضرب يا بوي اضرب يا بوي اضرب يا بوي
لا 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 لا
لا لا لا
مستحرم